Well, good evening and welcome to the Oasis podcast this evening. My name is John Mark, and normally I'm here with Wayne Weaver, but Wayne is out of town tonight, and so this evening we're going to be looking at church life from a little different angle. Normally we're getting the pastor's perspective, but I'm joined this evening by Stephen Campbell and Sam Eicher Jr. We just call him Junior, or I call him Jam sometimes because it's a combination of Junior and Sam. But anyway, they're two members of the security team here at Oasis Tabernacle. And we're going to get their take on ministry from the angle of church security tonight. And I guess some might ask the question, why church security? Shouldn't we just trust God for this? I mean, we are worshiping Him after all, right? But the Bible speaks about watchmen for cities and even gatekeepers in the temple. I mean, that was something that was appointed, a very specific duty to have people as gatekeepers. And I think our security team, you guys kind of operate in that way. And so I know that growing up, I didn't think much about security. We just went to church, and we never expected anybody to come barging in. That only happened over in places like Russia or places where there was persecution. But anyway, I think that as a pastor, I've gained a real deep appreciation for men like yourselves and the job that you do, and for men of faith who are willing to tackle the unexpected situations that can arise around any of our services. So anyway, here, Stephen Campbell, Sam Eicher Jr., welcome to the podcast this evening. Glad to have you on. You guys can relax. It's not really that nerve-wracking. There's not too much we can do except say the wrong thing. So that's okay. And your wives will still love you even if you mess up. So that's no problem. I'm going to be asking you some questions tonight, and I've told you about that ahead of time, but I just want to share a few more things as we actually bring this subject to bear, because I know that, at least from our tradition, there aren't a lot of churches with security. Have you seen a lot of churches in our, kind of our conservative tradition? There aren't too many that have a security team. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. Most of them don't have like an official security team. So I don't know if it's just an undiscussed subject or whether they
might have a few burly fellows somewhere that are supposed to take care of things if something happens. But I remember as a pastor over the years, and I remember pastoring in a larger church and then in a very small church, but we didn't have anything like that. And even when there were issues, I remember getting pulled aside just a few minutes before I was supposed to go preach because somebody showed up and they thought that this is something the preacher should handle instead of the ushers or greeters. And we didn't really have a security team. And I'll say this, that it's really nice to have a team of people, men who are godly men, but are also willing to step in and take those situations. I never worry about that now. I know that if there's somebody I need to speak with, somebody's going to handle it till the end of the service. It's not going to fall on me to deal with that right in the middle of things. So that's a huge thing. And then even just some of the measures and things that you gentlemen take on throughout the service is quite a blessing, really. So when I look at these things, I'm just going to start with a couple of scriptures, and then we're going to just have a conversation here. So for those who may wonder about the idea of a security team, I was amazed just looking over how much security was actually in the tabernacle, or the temple, when David and Solomon established the rules for worship. I mean, they established a worship team. They had the priests who were to do the services. They had the Levites who were to help with those things. But they gave specific attention to gatekeepers and those who would provide security for the temple complex, which is, I'd never really thought about that before, but that is there. And then, of course, cities of those days had watchmen, and I think it's interesting. Isaiah 62 is God speaking to Jerusalem. He says, "I've set watchmen on your walls, O Jerusalem. They shall never hold their peace day or night. you who make mention of the Lord, do not keep silent. And I know that this is speaking in prophetic terms and to Israel, and it's not church security, but God is talking about watchmen on the wall, keeping watch and speaking out. And then in 2 Chronicles 8:14, we have this little note from Solomon's time, and according to the order of David, his father, he appointed the priests for their service and the Levites for their duties, to praise and to serve before the priests, as the duty of each day required, and the gatekeepers by their divisions at each gate. For so David, the man of God, had commanded. So they had divisions of these guys. Now we have one security team, and when you're not eating donuts, you're out on patrol, and that's a great thing. I know we joke about that, but you guys have consumed a lot of donuts, though. Since the first of the year, I've noticed that I haven't seen as many donut boxes around. So I don't know if that happened because of your heart attack or if it happened because of diets, but it seems like there's a little bit fewer donuts around these days. One more. I want to just share this. One more scripture, Psalm 127, verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Now notice this. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Now, here's the deal. We have a security team here at Oasis. It started in the last, 3-4 years, something like that. And we don't look at you guys as our defense. We look at God as that. But on the other hand, he works through people. And we do have a security team here. So tell you what, let's do, because this is your first time on the podcast, some people might not know who you are. So I'm going to ask Stephen if you would just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your journey. And then Junior, I'm going to ask you to do the same, and then we'll continue on from there. So Stephen, just tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey, and because you're not just a robust fellow with a penchant for security. You have a heart for the Lord. How did that develop?
Yes, good evening. My name is Stephen Campbell. I grew up in Maryland, moved here, I forget when it was, 2015 actually.
Okay.
I knew about Oasis, so we knew coming in exactly where we were going to go. There wasn't much of a question for us. My wife didn't know it that well, but we knew it for sure. For me, I got saved, didn't understand what happened at the time. That's odd, but no one led me to the Lord. The Holy Spirit led me there. And then looking back later, I finally put the pieces together and understood what happened. But I think for me, in a nutshell, the Lord has, from a personal standpoint, I think most of what the Lord has dealt with me in is personal motives type stuff. Like, why did you say what you said? Or you made that comment to that person for what reason? And I began to see, and I still do to this day, how much trash, pride, and debauchery is actually still in my heart, even though I've been a Christian for, almost 20 years. And so I find that very rewarding, even though it hurts sometimes to actually admit that you're a jerk or you just plain messed up.
That's a tough one to do for any of us.
But the Lord has a way of dealing with a human being if you give yourself over to him.
And so with that gratefulness for what God has done, you want to serve him. And I'm going to ask you some questions about how you got into security. But Junior, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was your spiritual journey?
My name is Sam Eicher. Pastor John calls me Jam sometimes just for the fun of it. Hilarious. But anyway, I was born and raised Amish. Came to faith at a very, very early age, sensitive, conscious, and always dealt with a lot of condemnation in my life, a lot of guilt, shame, and never really understood the whole concept of Christ becoming sin, taking everything for us. I understood forgiveness, but I didn't understand the rest of it. And that the cross releases me from who I was in the flesh man. Christ took everything that I was not only what I did, but who I was in the flesh. And so I dealt with a lot of shame in the bygone years. And But coming from a very strong faith foundation, family, and always felt very, I never was at a place in my life where I didn't believe in God. I always believed in God.
Always had that.
Always sought to walk deeper in that. But as far as church security, whatever brought me there, I guess that was the next question, right?
That's coming up. I mean, and we'll do that. But I guess I would ask you this: did you ever imagine in your spiritual walk that God would call you into something, at least in the local body, with security? I mean, we usually think of church duties and serving the kingdom of God as, teaching or organizing some event or whatever, but security. Did you ever imagine that?
I really didn't, but it's surprisingly how much connection there is, to where the same way as we watch the church, you should be watching your own personal life. Mm-hmm. Personal life is no different,
right?
You have gates. Everybody has gates. You need to be watching, and if you're not, then there's things are coming and going as they want to.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. What about you, Stephen? I mean, you're a man's man. You're out there cutting trees and doing all of this stuff, but you come to church evenings or mornings, and you're engaging with the congregation from a slightly different angle. I'm looking at them from the front. You're looking at them kind of from the side, the bottom, the back. You're taking care of those things. Do you ever imagine that? Was that something on your radar of ministry, or?
No, not really. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, which I think it covers it here. Mike come to me one day and said, "Hey, you want to be part of church security?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm will." I mean, I didn't know what it involved. I had no idea what I was getting into. My thing is if I can serve, I can serve. If someone asks me to serve, I'm gonna say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got into it. Pretty much that.
So would you trade the job now?
Oh heavens, no.
You wouldn't. Okay. How about you, Junior?
I really enjoy it. There's a great group of guys, and we do love donuts.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, and you guys have been very generous too. I mean, the rest of us have really kind of benefited from that from time to time, and I know there's some little young guys running around who, it's often fun for me to watch. They've been to the security room and they've got a donut in their hand, and they're excited by it. So as you think about security, what have you learned about the church from the vantage point of being on the security team, thinking about the security aspect of just simply watching the church so that others can worship? Because I know it takes you away from the worship service. You guys are out patrolling. You're doing your thing. I don't even know what all you do. And, of course, we wouldn't share that on the podcast, what all your protocol is. But I know I see you men are out and about, and you keep an eye on things. And I think it really brings a sense of relaxation not relaxation, but a sense of peace, quietness. Most people can go into the sanctuary and they don't give security a second thought. So what have you seen? What have you learned about the church from the vantage point of being on the security team?
For me, I think one thing is that you see the nuts and bolts in a manner like before I was on security, I didn't really serve in a manner as far as a specific spot at church. I didn't have a specific team or mission that I had. So you come to church, you walk in the doors, you sit down, you enjoy the service. When you're here, you see every nut and bolt. You see the pastor go in and out. You see the guy going in for opening. Then he comes back out. Then he sits down. You see the ushers usher the people, and you see the Sunday school teachers going back and forth. So you actually get to see the nuts and bolts of the entire machine, if you want to call it that, working in a manner that you have no comprehension. On any given Sunday, there's probably 30, 40 people that are making that service happen, that if you're just in there sitting, taking in the service, you have no comprehension of, not because you're ignorant, you just never saw it from that point of view. And
it's kind of like, it's sort of like if it's all happening, you just think it's happening. You don't even think about what causes it to happen. It's like the sound guy. If you don't even notice he's back there unless the sound is off, and then, or just like we had recently when the heat was not set right and everybody was cold, then all of a sudden they realize we have a thermostat. You just don't think about those things. Sam, what have you learned about the church? What are some things that maybe before, as just attending, and I don't know what all you've been involved in the past with the church. You've been at Oasis and at Crossroads for quite a number of years, but I don't know what all your previous involvement was, but as you've been doing this, what are some things that you've seen about the church that maybe you didn't before?
Well, I mean, I feel it's great to be a part of something where people can come and they're not worried about security. They're not worried about bad things happening or just going unchecked. And to me, I mean, I see people freely going in, couples sitting together. We sometimes miss that a little bit, but families sitting together, just enjoying church. They're just sitting there enjoying church. Where if you wouldn't have any security, you'd always have that check mark.
Mm-hmm. And there's something that is kind of sad in our society. Our society has changed a bit, and it does feel like churches have become a target for more vandalism and even intruders at times. And while we are to be reaching out and ministering to people, we also need to look out for the safety of people. And churches can be kind of sitting ducks on a Sunday morning. I remember that was usually when the panhandlers came around to one church I was at. We were right on the main highway, and that's usually when people showed up looking for money. That was often what pulled me out of the service, because people said, "Hey, there's somebody here with a real need. Could you come talk?" And I'm like, and shame on me. I should have been training people to do that, but I would get called out and I would do that as a pastor. And now I know that you as a security team are generally the first defense on that, or the first people they would meet. And I think it's beautiful because while you are firm, you know how to be that kind of person, you're also men that have compassion. And you have the heart of the Lord, and you're walking in His Spirit. So you're able to share a Christian witness while also maintaining security for the congregation. Now, you as a security team do a lot more than some. Like you aren't necessarily considering yourself IT guys, but if I understand correctly, you were the ones that ran all the cabling and installed the cameras, security cameras here in the church. And in fact, I think the one time after you guys had been crawling through the attic and crawl spaces, Sam, you had some interesting comment. You said, if something like this happens again, what was that? Do you remember that? I seem to remember some comment. Maybe Stephen remembers it.
Well, the comment was, well, I should first say the guys were all up in the attic climbing around. William, Stephen, Glendon, and I had told them that, well, the last time I was spotted was a fat guy was heading out east.
Okay.
So that was the last they seen of me.
The last they seen of you. You're not going to be heading up into those crawl spaces. Well, I think that many people often don't realize the amount of work and the ministry that you guys do in this, and you saw the need for security cameras, and obviously you also realized that installing those things, if we hired that out, was going to cost some money, and so somehow you figured it out, and I'm amazed. I mean, you guys are quite fantastic. You had some good fun, you ate some good food, and you got, you're out there. What do you find that kind of thing fulfilling? Or is that just kind of... Yeah,
I do to a degree. It's something that it's probably just a man in me. We kicked his butt.
Okay.
We took care of business.
Took care of business, yeah.
Because we had actually figured it up. It took us about 100 man hours between the five of us till the different nights and everything. Come up to about 100 man hours. And
you've done a tremendous job of putting that in. What are some of the sacrifices that you make personally to be on the security team?
I think some of the biggest ones are just like, you can't. I don't get to sit inside all the time with my wife, family, etc. And they may sacrifice more than what we do. The women, I think, mind it more than the guys do.
Because you guys are out there, you can drink coffee,
Right.
you can eat donuts,
We're having fun.
You can have fun, yeah. But you do get to pick up on the services. You know, we've got a great team that runs the media, and of course they have the screens out front. So if you're out there, you can pick up some of the service. But I know that many times there are other conversations going on, and you guys have a parallel church sometimes. But Stephen, what do you find? What are some sacrifices that you've made to be in this position? I mean, I know it's cost you something. I mean, just the morning donuts is going to cost, because I don't think the church has been buying your donuts for you.
No, but everyone pitches in on that. Like, we have a little cup back there that we replenish with cash once in a while, and we get the donuts. But similar to what Sam said, I mean, you're here. I like being here. We're supposed to be here at 8:30. I enjoy being here around 8 o'clock.
So you're coming in early.
Yeah, my wife and I don't think we've driven together to church in 3 years, which is fine. It's neither here nor there. But that's something that a lot of couples you're coming to church with your family. Mm-hmm. Most of us aren't. Some of us are, some of us aren't, depending where we live. Sam, I think, comes with his wife. But for me, I think Glendon's the same way. We have little kids at home. Mm-hmm. You know, to wrestle them to church at 8 a.m.,
right, and then to keep them
contain
there
them for an hour and a
yeah.
half, which my family well, they have abundance of energy to contain that for an hour and a
Can't
half.
imagine where
and
they
then
got
make
that.
and then well, they got it fair and square. But to get them to sit still for an hour and a half pre-service, and then expect them to sit still for another 2 hours, I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but it'd be putting a bottle on a soda and
kind of trying to shaking
thing.
it up. Yeah, exactly. So as you look at those sacrifices, so your wives are making some, your children are making some sacrifices. When we have special events at the church, they make even more sacrifices, and you do too, because I know recently I think you guys all got involved in doing more than just security. You actually did shuttle duty, I think. Some of you did. Is that correct? The last conference that we had, you guys put in time to take care of security then for speakers, and at our special events, if we have special guests come in, you guys, one or more of you are assigned to keep an eye on them and to monitor their time, to show a spirit of excellence and making sure, because in all of these things, when you are a guest speaker in a place, quite often people want to talk with you. Mm-hmm. And, I've been in places where you get hung up with a certain person and you can't quite shake them off, and you're getting fatigued, or you've kind of lost interest in that conversation, but you've got to be gracious. You're the guest. What we've asked you as a security team to do is to monitor that, and if the conversation is going too long, you have special instructions to just simply interrupt and move things along, and you guys do that with grace, but it also takes extra time. Do you enjoy that kind of thing, or is that how would that job rank on your list of duties in any event? It's not quite as high as eating donuts, I wouldn't think.
No, I would say it's higher.
It's higher?
But
Okay.
I think, to me, excuse me, I think if you process it, like if you look at general public, you have millionaires, billionaires, and these guys have private security. But if you boil that down and you look at some of the pastors, all of the pastors that we have here, or the pastors that get brought in, there's more value in those human beings than the billionaires and the millionaires. So why wouldn't we protect them? Why wouldn't we guard their time and make sure that they're not violated emotionally? Because if they speak for an hour and a half, that takes something out of a man. I've never done it, but that takes something out of a man to stand up, especially if he's bare in his heart. Why does he want bombarded with trivial stuff? Mm-hmm. Like, so for me, I actually kind of get a kick out of it. I get to meet the people. I get to honor them by serving them. But then you can add that level of protection, whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, when you boil it down, what is in them is more valuable than money. And if
That's interesting.
You know, if they do it, if the public does it for people based on money, I mean, a lot of people that have an ultra high net worth have bodyguards or whatever. It's not bodyguards because they have internal value of spiritual potential, or however you want to word that. It's the fact that they have money. You know, people want that. But what's in people that come here in our own pastures is it's way more than that.
And so in that standard of excellence in serving, it really is a thing of stewarding even their time and being gracious with what they bring. That's amazing. Have you both been assigned to individuals when they were here? I find that I think if I didn't know you were doing that, I wouldn't know you were doing that. You've really honed that and done it very graciously. I just think it's one of those things that you as a security team do tremendously well. Now, I had called your security team leader, Mike. I was going to have him show up here tonight, but he had caught a bad cold and didn't think that he would be the best fellow in front of a microphone around a table. So he actually recommended I call the two of you, and so you were highly recommended by your leader. But I think it's great to see what you all do. Now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and having worked with security at the church, how important do you feel it is to have security at Oasis Tabernacle? Just on a, what would you say? Is it very important, moderately important, or of utmost importance?
I would class it from a scale of 1 to 10. I mean, I'd say you're right up in 9 or 10.
Okay. And some of the things that you've seen that would cause you to think that.
Well, one morning we had a lady that was pulled. That was before we had the cameras. So we had a girl pulled into the church, and she must have really ticked somebody off in the process of getting turned in. He comes storming in behind her. This all happened in the parking lot. So obviously we weren't just right there. But having cameras at this point, we could actually see it. We'd see the confrontation at this point. But he storms in after her and just basically said, if I had a gun, I'd shoot you right here. And,
wow.
For somebody to do that on a Sunday morning, that really shook me. And I was like, wow. I don't know if he really would have, but the chances are pretty high maybe he would have.
But even hearing a threat of that nature is very serious. And again, you look at our culture today. There was a time when you would have said, well, people would be careful around a church, but today it doesn't seem like that. In fact, it feels like there is a disdain many times for the church, and I don't think we should live in fear. But I think it's like the same thing of putting a lock on your house.
Right.
Somebody that really wants to do something probably is going to get in. But on the other hand, it doesn't hurt to put a few steps in place to make that a little less easy. Stephen, what would you say in rating the importance of a security team?
I mean, I would probably agree with Junior, 9 to 10. And it's not as much even deterrence of a threat, because one morning, a lot of times we stand at the front door there, the main entrance, and one morning there's a little girl, she might have been 3. She comes from somewhere in the foyer, comes out to the doors, the big doors in the front there, walks out through the doors and goes out into the parking lot. No parents, no... Like, I still don't know whose kid it was to this day. But we kept an eye on her. We had our radios, we're chit-chatting. I'm sure the guys on the camera seen her. But we were back and forth, so we kept an eye on the little girl. Went out, watched where she went. She kind of milled around the parking lot and then come back in, and I guess went back in the sanctuary. I still don't know who she was. But if no one would have been there watching, where would that little girl ended up at?
Right, and so there's an element of simply watching movement of people as well, and making sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I know even for myself, if I get into a good conversation, I tend to forget everything around me, and my own kids can disappear and be gone for 10 minutes, and I don't know they left.
You're just hoping somebody else had an eye out for you.
And I don't do it on purpose. I tend to get into a conversation. I forget that, so-and-so was with me, and 10 minutes later, my wife or someone's like, hey, where'd he go? I have no idea. So I think it's important from that element, if nothing else, because I'm sure I'm not the only person that does that.
And throughout a given service, you as a team are regularly patrolling empty rooms and hallways and things like that, keeping an eye on where everybody is, and making sure that things, not only are threats not coming from outside, they're also not happening on the inside. And I think that's huge. You do a great job with that. So I guess another question I would have for you then, what's a great story that you have that just sort of solidified in your mind that this is a ministry God has called me to be in? It could be anything. It could be just even the camaraderie that you have. It could be, but what's something that kind of just has made you say, you know what, I believe God's called me to this. I feel a definite confirmation of that.
I mean, for me, I don't know that I could say, yes, nail on the head, the hammer on the head type of deal, but I would rather be, I wouldn't be anywhere else on a Sunday morning. Not only do I enjoy the camaraderie and the back and forth with the 6 guys that are on the team, like, we love each other. We get a kick out of each other. We're honest and open. If one guy has a problem, we have no problem spilling the beans. And if we got to pray for each other, have at it. Doesn't happen a lot, but it has. And even from the standpoint of we're on security, we're not in the service, but you're in the building where the presence of God is. Whether you're in that service or not, you still get things. You don't consciously get it, but you're there. So, yes, we sacrifice, but we have our own church a lot of times. And a lot of times it's, if you actually go back and listen to the message or something, our conversations or whatever we're involved.
You said, yeah, it seemed like our conversation dovetailed with what the pieces we were getting through the monitors or whatever. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Any particular thing that you would say, you know what, I've been doing this, I felt like God called me, but this really confirmed it?
I really can't think of any happening that happened, but for me, it's more of just I naturally defend. It's kind of in me to naturally defend something. So it becomes quite natural to be a part of that. And then the fun we have as a team is just, we have conversations that probably church people would blow them away. Stuff we talk about. And
had no clue that the security team was that deep, huh?
Right. And we'll just lay it out. This is the way it is.
Well, that's interesting. I really believe, and I've seen some. You walk into some places and you see the security, and they look like they kind of look like that stiff security. I look at you fellows when I come in, and maybe it's because I know you as well as I do, but I look at you and I don't see that stiffness. I see people who look approachable. You guys could be greeters as well as security, and yet you're very alert. You take it seriously. You're on the job, and it's something that happens every Sunday and every other meeting. And you guys, some of you came during Bible school, and did security, just kind of around the perimeter of the place, making sure that when you have a group of children coming for a midweek, that here in this very public spot, there are people watching out who are not involved with necessarily making the event happen, but are keeping an eye out, and that's huge. I think these are areas of ministry that many times we don't think about that, but as being ministry, but it really is, and I appreciate that. I think other churches could probably benefit, but I was going to ask you, would you recommend some sort of a security team or apparatus to other churches? Would you say, it's a valuable thing and your church would benefit by it?
I would recommend it strongly, because you don't want to be a church where just anybody walks in and he's unquestioned and just left alone. The person might intend harm, and you need somebody there specifically called out for that service. Mm-hmm. Of having the authority to just walk up and ask him questions, and making sure that somebody steps to the plate, and that's your security guys, step to the plate and aren't afraid to ask the tough questions.
And that's huge. I mean, that's huge for the people facilitating the service in the sanctuary. That's huge for the people who are coming in. I think about a small church that I was a part of in the last 10 years, and I remember one Sunday a guy came in and he was. I didn't see any alcohol on him, but he had his backpack, and I found out later he had his bottle of Listerine, because that was his alcohol of choice, and he was consuming Listerine during the service and getting more drunk as the service went by, and he became very disruptive. Mm-hmm. And we had nobody essentially to do that kind of thing. And that morning there was a family that had visited the church for the first time. They had 2 young girls, and the girls were just traumatized, didn't want to ever come back, because here this inebriated person had, was just creating, and it scared her. And I think, finding ways to deal with that and not allow the enemy to intrude on a service. I mean, he had a soul. He needed help as much as anybody, but it wasn't appropriate, some of the liberties that he took, because other people were tied up, and nobody else seemed to want to deal with that. So I think these kinds of things are very helpful. Stephen, what would you say? Would you recommend a security team of some sort?
Absolutely. And I think something that we probably don't think about from a cultural background, but the house of God it's a place of law and order. It's not lawless. It's not just a free-for-all. I know that some of our background, we probably shy away from that, and I use this comparison. So a lot of us, if we want to be a member of the country club, golf course, whatever, we'd do whatever those regulations asked of us to do it, and we'd happily do it to play golf. But if our church puts restraints on us, we throw a fit. That's bad. That's terrible. But I think with security, there needs to be law and order, and part of our job is to make sure, not necessarily in the sanctuary, that's the usher's responsibility, but outside the sanctuary is our domain. There's been stipulations that we've been handed, and it's our job to look forward, look around and make sure that those things don't get violated. And I personally think it's a good thing.
I agree with both of you. I think it's an excellent thing. And if you are tuning into this podcast tonight, it's not that we're saying it's a must, but if you have never looked at security for your congregation, and that may be as basic as just saying, if there is ever an incident, you 3 or you 4 are the ones who are the first line of defense. You may not do anything else. I know that you, as a team, have a protocol. You are out there, I think that even if there was push came to shove, we're still fairly non-resistant. But I think there is some non-lethal motivators that you have that could probably could deal with some threats. And I feel like that is something that, again, some may disagree with, but I think there's something very important about just simply knowing that there are some tools we hope we never have to use, and
Right.
we simply want to create a space where people can worship the Lord and not even think about security. And so I would say tonight, as we look at this, it's a blessing to have a security team. I would say that if you have one, it's not just about finding a big burly fellow to do that job. It's finding someone who has a heart for the Lord and for people. And I sense that in all of our security team, is that there is a heart for the Lord, first of all, a desire to follow Him, a desire to honor Him. And then there is a heart to look after His people. And I would believe that I've heard from nearly everyone a real heart to evangelize those who come in. So it's not like, hey, this is our place, this is our club, but there is a deep desire to see the kingdom of God advanced. And so as you are thinking about your own church, I pray that God raises up solid people to be that line of defense in the church, to be the gatekeeper, so to speak, to be the watchman on the wall, even in a physical sense, because we've found it to be a real blessing. And gentlemen, I think it's an honor to know you, to have you as friends, but also it's great to walk in on a Sunday morning, few donut crumbs in the beard, and just know that you guys are here enjoying yourself and on the job. It's great. And so I want to thank you. Anything else that you'd want to share? This is your chance. You could tell people about something that's very important to this whole process. If I've not asked you the right questions, you have anything you'd want to add that I haven't asked?
There was one thing I was thinking, that it's always easy to be the good guy, but it's a lot tougher to be kind of the bad guy. You have to go ask somebody to. I had to go ask a guy one time to move. He was standing right, worshiping the Lord, standing in the middle of church, in a spot where he wasn't supposed to be at. He was supposed to move over, and I had to go ask him to move. And that's never easy. Being the bad guy is never easy.
Say, hey, you're expressing your worship in the wrong place. Could you? That's a tough one.
Over.
Yeah. Anything you'd have to add to that?
I think on the importance of the security team, I think you have that argument, well, should we, shouldn't you? But if some incident would ever happen, I think that argument would pretty quickly turn into, why didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow, that's true.
And I think you'll find the people that are personally against it would probably be the first ones to whine. If their child or they themselves got violated, well, then the church is at fault. No, that's not the reason. Why wouldn't you put in protocol?
Mm-hmm.
Do what you can. We're not out here to be violent. It's kind of a happy dance. You don't want to really people know that when they walk in the front door that they're looking at a guy that's a security member. That's their goal. Try to blend in.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, that we're not going to be too super shy about telling you who we are if we think you're a threat. It's not always fun, not really easy.
Right.
But it is what it is. Somebody's got to do it.
And I think that is such a key point when you look at that. We often think, well, why is it necessary? And yet when something happens, we say we should have had something in place. And that's kind of what we've done. It's not that we have men in combat fatigues and army boots running around. That you guys are dressed up, you look sharp, you're here, and it's that whole point of just simply, yep, all is well. And so I guess for tonight, that's what we have. And I really appreciate, Sam, you joining us, and Stephen, you coming on and just sharing and talking about what I think is a very important issue for churches today. And may God grant us all the grace to rest in His care, to walk in His peace, but to put some of those things in place that we can be wise. The prudent man foresees the evil and hides himself. And I think having a security team is being prudent in these days. Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you. Have a good evening, and we'll catch you next time.